Hi, my name is Tamara Mills, and this set of videos will be presented in 15-minute segments because YouTube has those rules in effect. And by the way, don't try loading directly to their site. The sound quality is absolutely horrendous. This will be The Late Great USA, The Coming War with Iran, written by Larry Pahl. You can see this right here. I'm going to put in some commentary, but not a whole lot. Okay? An angry goat is charging at a ram, and in a rage, the goat pummels the ram, smashing it to the ground. Furious hooves trample the ram until the life is beaten out of it, and the awful excitement and horror of a drama usually found in the dark arenas that attract men worldwide to dogfights and cockfights can be found in the middle of one of the Bible's prophetic books. Promoters use this gladiatorial savagery to draw a crowd to increase their take. And in this case, the promoter is God. He's using the writings of the prophet Daniel, but what is his purpose in drawing a crowd around this animal brutality? We pick up our study in the 8th chapter of the Old Testament prophetic book of Daniel. And in this chapter, Daniel receives a vision. He also hears the words of an angelic being who has been instructed to help him understand the vision. We would be foolish to try to interpret the meaning of this vision apart from the commentary provided by the angel. The vision involves a ram with two horns being attacked by a goat from the west that has one notable horn. These animals and their horns represent nations. This conclusion can be drawn by a look at the previous chapter. In the 7th chapter of Daniel, the angel tells Daniel what the four beasts that he sees represent. These four huge beasts are four empires which will arise on earth. Daniel 7:17. The snoring you hear is my husband in the chair next to me. He's asleep. The angel says beasts are empires. Animals represent nations or empires. This is not a radical or eccentric idea. Political cartoonists regularly represent nations by drawing animals. For instance, the bear representing Russia. But what do rams and goats represent? We'll want the angel who appears in this chapter to tell us which particular empires are represented by animals appearing in the vision in Daniel 8. And another question we want the interpreting angel to answer is, when does this all apply and to what time period does it refer? The angel doesn't disappoint us by providing the identity of the nations represented by the ram and goat and the time frame of their appearance. As to the question of the time of the vision, the angel says 3 different times that the vision is for the time of the end. Verse 17, understand, O Son of Man, for at the time of the end shall be the vision. I will, this is verse 19, I will make thee know what shall be in the last end of the indignation. That was the first part of 19. And the third place, the last part of verse 19, for at the time appointed, the end shall be. Now the angel's being very clear that this vision is for the end of time. This is an angel from heaven speaking, not a human Bible interpreter. It's important to take note of this because most Bible commentators say that this vision deals with Alexander the Great. A simple glance at the books on the church shelves, the Christian library, a read of all the major commentaries, consult with the famous radio and TV preachers, and a check of materials at the seminaries will agree. The verdict is well nigh unanimous because biblical commentators for centuries interpreted this vision to be a symbolic representation of Alexander's defeat of the Persian armies. It's understandable that we'd follow suit. But now we're hearing the words of an angel from heaven, and while it might be our normal default, mode to heed the biblical experts, it seems more prudent when given the chance to first listen to the voice of an angel from heaven. I'd listen. If the angel's words can be taken at their face value, then the ultimate application of Daniel's vision is for a time long after that of Alexander the Great. As to the second area where we could look to the interpreting angel for help, that of the nations represented by these beasts and horns, the angel gives the following very plain declaration. In verse 20, the ram which you saw having 2 horns are the kings of Media and Persia, and the rough goat is the king of Grecia, and the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king. I apologize for the snoring. Note in verse 20 that the goat is said to be a king, and then the great horn is also said to be a king. King is from a Hebrew word that is usually translated reign, and so carries the idea of a kingdom. Thus, the goat appears to represent a kingdom, a territory of potentially vast proportions, whereas the horn would seem to represent a kingdom that is part of another larger kingdom. If we're going to be loyal to the interpreting angel, we must find modern meanings for the phrase kings of Media and Persia. While common sense might say that these names can only refer to the ancient past, that is, the former kingdoms of Media and Persia, a look at the words of the interpreting angel given above would indicate otherwise. When angels give directions, it's best to listen. A simple check of any encyclopedia will tell us that modern Iran was formerly called Persia. But what about Media? The modern ethnic Kurds are the largest people group in the world without a home country. They dwell in several countries, including Iraq. The Kurds claim to be descendants of the ancient Medes, and thus it would be fair to say that the angel is using the name of the ancient nation of Media to refer to the area where it once existed, now the approximate area of Iraq and Syria. We are given another rather interesting clue in this chapter about the nature of the kingdoms we're looking for. In the previous chapter, Daniel 7, ceremonially unclean animals, a leopard, lion, and bear, were used to represent heathen nations, but here in Daniel 8, Daniel is shown a vision which has sacrificial animals, a ram and goat. Sacrificial animals would imply religious conflict in religious, not secular nations. Given the geography we've just uncovered, which includes the nations of Iran, Iraq, and Syria, it could be rationally and logically concluded that the reign referred to above is that of Islam. Another evidence from the text highlighting this secular religious dichotomy in these visions is that Daniel 7 is written in Aramaic, the tongue of the Gentiles, and Daniel 8 is written in Hebrew, the tongue of the Jews. The ram symbolizes the fundamentalist power of Islam in the Middle East, and a life or death struggle with the goat representing Greece. What power in the modern world is represented by the interpreting angel's mention of Greece? If we insisted on interpreting the angel's words with the literalism that biblical conservatives and fundamentalists often insist upon, we would be forced to say that Greece means the modern nation of Greece. But the Bible must be interpreted with more than simple literalism. For example, Jesus regularly used metaphors and parables. The Bible is filled with metaphors. They are one of its key interpretive mechanisms. When Jesus was asked about his parable of the sower, in which a farmer sows seed in various places, he explained that the seed is really a metaphor or symbol for the Word of God. Jesus chastised his disciples, for not having the understanding of the simple interpretive mechanism of metaphor. He said, "How then will you understand all of the parables? Mark 4:13, indicating the profound place reserved for metaphors. The seed is not a seed, it's the Word of God. The farmer is not a farmer, he's an evangelist, and the weeds are not weeds, they are the cares of this world. What then does the angel mean by the term Greece? The Apostle Paul talks about Greeks several places in the New Testament, but he's not referring to people who live in Greece. Instead, he's referring to people who live in the civilized world as a whole. For example, for the Jews require a sign, and the Greeks seek after wisdom, but we preach Christ crucified, unto the Jews a stumbling block, and unto the Greeks foolishness. 1 Corinthians 1:22 and 23. The Greek word Helen, Hellen, like Nancy, here translated Greeks, is also translated as Gentiles and basically means a person who speaks Greek. Not necessarily someone from the literal country of Greece. Greek was the language of the learned. It carried the culture which began the famous ancient Greek poets and philosophers and ultimately became the basis for what we today call Western civilization. America has taken so much from the Greek culture, much like the Romans did. The Romans took the idea of theater and forums and um, the idea of a republic and a democracy and all that. And of course, they stole a lot of stuff from the Greeks. Notice that this goat comes from the West. Thus, we have pictured here in cartoon form the struggle between Islam and Western civilization rooted in the culture of Christianity. Since September 11, 2001, is there any struggle on the face of the earth more prominent? The Bible here in Daniel 8 has zeroed in on our time with amazing singularity. It's the providence of most works on Bible prophecy to focus on what is happening in the Middle Eastern land of Israel. However, in the prophetic sections that comprise the text for our current study, the nation of Israel is a non-factor. It's the nation of the United States that rises front and center in the biblical chapters that we'll be examining. The angel tells us that the prominent horn on this goat is the first king. Here, the word translated first means foremost, not necessarily first in terms of order. Who is the foremost, the first nation of modern Western civilization? It's certainly the United States of America, the wealthiest country in the history of the world. Thus, we have pictured here in Daniel 8 a vision of the clash of civilizations east and west, a clash of religious cultures, Islamic and Christian. The prophecy says that two major ram horns or powers will arise. The symbolism is saying that two kings or nations will arise from this region who will tangle with the West. I'm going to stop here for a couple of reasons. One, we're very close on our 15-minute limit. Two, my husband's snoring is getting progressively louder. And three, I've got a couple of things that are requiring my attention. I'm going to see how well this uploads to YouTube, get my husband to bed, and hopefully record some more here very shortly. I hope and pray that this turns out much better than the others. Thank you so much for your patience.